When my grandfather, Joe Miller, passed away last March, I wasn't prepared for what came next. His farm, an old, sprawling 200-acre piece of land outside Meadow Creek, was supposed to be a quiet inheritance, a reminder of the summers I spent running through cornfields and listening to his stories on the porch. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I lived far away in the city, buried under the weight of a demanding job that kept me from visiting as often as I should have. Grandpa Joe was always there, though, in every memory, every photo, every letter he sent with updates about the farm. He loved that place more than anything, and he always said it would stay in our family forever. That's why, when my phone rang at 6 a.m. one Tuesday morning, I didn't think much of it. Probably just another telemarketer or some automated message. But then I heard her voice, Mrs. Thompson, Grandpa's neighbor for over 40 years, and everything changed. "They're building houses on your property," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "Big yellow machines started digging yesterday. You need to come quick." At first, I thought she must have been mistaken. Maybe construction workers had crossed a boundary by accident. Mrs. Thompson wasn't the type to exaggerate. But still, I couldn't imagine anyone daring to touch Grandpa's land without permission. Still, her urgency got to me. I threw clothes into a suitcase, barely taking the time to zip it up before I hit the road. 5 hours later, I turned onto the familiar dirt path leading to the farmhouse, breaking speed limits the whole way. The closer I got, the stranger things felt. The peaceful countryside I remembered was interrupted now by the rumble of heavy machinery. Dust clouds rose above the trees as I crested the hill overlooking the eastern section of the property. My heart sank. A fleet of bulldozers and excavators tore into the soil where Grandpa used to grow corn and soybeans. Workers moved around like ants, marking areas with bright orange spray paint. Near the road stood a large sign, "Future Home of Sunny Pines East, 96 luxury homes, starting at $450,000. I parked my car and walked toward a woman standing apart from the chaos. She wore spotless beige pants and a crisp white blouse, even in the dusty surroundings. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she held a clipboard while talking on her phone. When she noticed me approaching, she ended her call and looked me up and down, like I was an inconvenience. "What's happening here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're preparing for residential development," she replied smoothly, extending her hand. "Diane Reynolds, Sunny Pines HOA President." "This is my land," I said, ignoring her handshake. "My grandfather owned this farm. He passed away recently, and I inherited it." Diane's smile didn't reach her eyes. "There must be some misunderstanding. Sunny Pines purchased this parcel last year. We have all the necessary permits and approvals." "That's impossible. My grandfather would never sell this land." She tilted her head slightly, almost pitying me. "Perhaps he didn't tell you. The sale was finalized 9 months ago. We've been planning this expansion for years." My mind raced. Grandpa had been sick during his final months, but his mind remained sharp. He wouldn't have sold his beloved farm without telling me. Something wasn't right. "I need to see those documents," I demanded. "You're welcome to contact our legal department," Diane said, handing me a business card. "But I assure you, everything is in order. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have a schedule to maintain." She turned away, already dialing another number on her phone. I stood there, feeling helpless, as machines continued to tear up the soil that had fed my family for generations. Back at the farmhouse, Mrs. Thompson waited on the porch with a pitcher of iced tea and a worried expression. She told me how developers had been eyeing the land for years, pressuring Grandpa Joe to sell. He refused every time, swearing the farm would stay in the family no matter what. Then, 3 months ago, someone from Sunny Pines visited repeatedly, claiming they needed a simple signature for a road easement. They brought different papers each time. Joe swore this farm would stay in your family forever, Mrs. Thompson said, her eyes watering. The day before he went to the hospital for the last time, he was looking through his old office, said he needed to find something important to protect the farm. Grandpa's office remained untouched since his death. I hadn't had the heart to go through his things when I briefly visited for the funeral. Now, I needed answers. The small room smelled of pipe tobacco and old books. Shelves lined the walls, stuffed with farming almanacs, family photo albums, and decades of careful records. Where would he have kept property records? The filing cabinet seemed like the obvious place to start. Hours passed as I searched, night falling, and my eyes growing tired from reading faded documents by lamplight. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed a loose floorboard under the desk. When I pressed it with my foot, it moved slightly. I knelt down and pried it open with a letter opener. Inside the small hidden space was a metal box. The key hung from a nail on the underside of the desk. Inside the box, I found the deed to the farm, Grandpa's will naming me as his heir, and several yellowed surveys of the property. But most interesting was a letter addressed to me in Grandpa's handwriting. "If you're reading this," it began, "then someone's trying to take what's ours." My hands shook as I read his words. Grandpa explained that developers had been eyeing his land for years, pressuring him to sell. In his final months, someone from Sunny Pines visited repeatedly, bringing different papers each time. "I never signed away my land," he wrote. "If they say I did, it's a lie. Look at the original survey from 1910 and compare it to what's recorded at the county now. The truth is in the boundaries." I dug deeper into the box and found the original survey. It showed property lines that extended much further than I'd realized. According to this document, Grandpa's farm was nearly 280 acres, not the 200 listed in current records. Sleep evaded me that night. I spread the papers across the kitchen table, comparing the old survey with newer maps. Something strange had happened over the decades. The eastern boundary had shifted, reducing our land. It wasn't just the area under construction. According to these original documents, we owned land where part of the existing Sunny Pines development already stood. By dawn, I knew what I had to do. First, I needed a lawyer. Then, I needed to understand exactly what Diane Reynolds and her HOA were up to. If they thought they could steal from my family, they were about to learn a painful lesson. I folded Grandpa's letter and put it in my pocket. "I won't let you down," I whispered to the empty room. Little did Diane know, she hadn't just messed with a grieving grandchild. She'd walked straight into a trap set by a man who'd anticipated her moves, even from the grave. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. News of Diane's arrest had spread like wildfire through Meadow Creek, and now everyone wanted answers, from the homeowners whose properties were technically on my land to the construction workers who'd been laid off overnight. But while some people were relieved, others were furious, not because they supported Diane, but because they feared losing their homes or investments. I stepped onto the porch with a cup of coffee, staring at the chaos unfolding in front of me. Reporters camped out near the driveway, shouting questions as soon as they spotted me. "Are you evicting these families?" one yelled. Another demanded, "What happens to Sunny Pines East?" It wasn't just reporters. Angry residents were showing up too. A man in a suit stormed toward me, waving papers. "I paid $500,000 for my lot. You can't just take that away." His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. Behind him, a young couple held hands nervously, clutching what looked like mortgage documents. "Nobody is taking anything," I said firmly, raising my voice so everyone could hear. "But we need to figure this out together. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice." That didn't stop the backlash. Over the next few days, social media exploded with accusations. Some called me greedy, saying I only cared about money. Others accused me of ruining lives. Even though I knew I was right, it still stung. These weren't faceless villains. They were real people with real dreams tied to those houses. But then, something unexpected happened. A twist neither I nor Diane could have predicted. A week after Diane's arrest, I received an email from an unknown sender. Attached was a single document titled Memorandum of Understanding between Sunny Pines, HOA, and Willow Creek Development, LLC. At first glance, it seemed like just another piece of corporate jargon. But buried deep within the legalese was a bombshell. Diane hadn't acted alone. She'd partnered with a shadowy developer named Victor Langston, whose name appeared repeatedly in connection with shady land deals across 3 states. Victor wasn't just any businessman. He was dangerous. Stories circulated about communities destroyed by his developments, lawsuits silenced with hush-money settlements, and whistleblowers intimidated into silence. And now, thanks to Diane's greed, he had set his sights on my family's farm. The memorandum outlined plans far bigger than 96 luxury homes. According to the document, Victor intended to drain the wetlands entirely, paving over them to create a massive commercial complex, shopping malls, office buildings, even a hotel, all under the guise of economic growth. My grandfather's precious land would be reduced to asphalt and concrete. This revelation changed everything. It wasn't just about protecting my inheritance anymore. It was about stopping a much larger threat. If Victor succeeded, not only would our community lose its character, but the fragile ecosystem my grandfather had fought so hard to preserve would vanish forever. I forwarded the document to Mr. Wallace, my attorney, along with a note, "We need to move fast. This goes beyond Sunny Pines." Meanwhile, tensions in the neighborhood reached a boiling point. Homeowners divided into 2 camps, those who believed I was trying to help, and those convinced I was a scam artist looking to profit off their misfortune. Diane's lawyers worked tirelessly behind the scenes, spreading misinformation and filing motions to delay the legal proceedings. Every day felt like a new obstacle. One evening, as I sat in Grandpa's office reviewing files, there was a knock at the door. Standing outside was Rachel Winters, the same woman who'd approached me after the HOA meeting weeks earlier. Her eyes were puffy, like she'd been crying. "They froze my bank account," she whispered, stepping inside. "Victor's people said they'll sue if I don't drop support for your plan." Rachel wasn't the only one targeted. Within days, several other homeowners reported similar threats. Cars were vandalized, pets went missing, and anonymous notes appeared on doorsteps, warning them to back off. Fear began to creep back into the community. But here's the thing about fear. It can either paralyze you or push you to fight harder. For many of us, it did the latter. Determined to expose Victor's scheme, I reached out to Janet Rivera, the reporter I'd reconnected with during the initial investigation. Together, we dug deeper into his past, uncovering a trail of corruption that stretched further than anyone imagined. We found evidence linking him to illegal dumping operations, bribes to local officials, and even ties to organized crime. But bringing him down wouldn't be easy. Victor wasn't someone who played fair. One night, as I drove home from meeting with Janet, I noticed headlights trailing me. No matter how fast I turned or doubled back, the car stayed close. Finally, I pulled into a gas station parking lot. The vehicle sped past, but not before I caught a glimpse of the driver. A man with cold, calculating eyes. That's when I realized Victor wasn't going to let me win without a fight. Despite the danger, momentum was building in our favor. More homeowners joined the coalition, emboldened by the truth about Victor's plans. Even some former HOA board members switched sides, including Gerald Fisher, who risked everything to testify against Diane and Victor in court. As the trial date approached, I found myself reflecting on Grandpa Joe's words. Sometimes the best trap isn't about catching someone doing wrong. It's about showing them a better way to do right. Maybe this fight wasn't just about saving the land. Maybe it was about proving that communities could thrive without sacrificing their values. Still, one question lingered in my mind. How far was Victor willing to go to protect his empire? And more importantly, was I ready to face whatever came next? The next morning, I woke up to the sound of engines roaring outside. Bright lights flooded through the windows as 3 white SUVs with Sunny Pines security painted on their doors blocked my driveway. Men in uniforms stood by the vehicles, one stepping forward and handing me a thick envelope. Cease and desist notice from the Sunny Pines Homeowners Association. He said flatly, "You are ordered to withdraw all claims against the development or face legal action." I tore open the envelope. Inside was a letter claiming my documents were fake and accusing me of attempting fraud. They demanded I pay for damages to the community's reputation. "You can't be serious," I said. The man shrugged. "Just delivering the message. Have a nice day." He returned to his vehicle, but none of them left. I tried to leave for breakfast in town, only to discover they had placed large concrete barriers across the end of my driveway overnight. "Sorry, sir," one guard said, without looking sorry at all. "This access point hasn't been approved by the development committee. It's been closed for safety reasons." I was trapped on my own property. My phone rang. Diane's name flashed on the screen. I hadn't given her my number. "Good morning," she said sweetly when I answered. "Enjoying the view?" "This is harassment," I shot back. "You can't block access to my property. Actually, according to county records, the real ones, your driveway crosses Sunny Pines common areas. We're within our rights to control access." I felt my stomach drop. She continued, "By tomorrow, your farmhouse will be cited for at least 15 code violations. Your water might get shut off due to maintenance issues. Local contractors won't return your calls because they know better than to cross me." "That's illegal." "That's small-town politics, dear," she replied smugly. "You can't win this. But I'm reasonable. Drop your claims, sign over the disputed acres, and this all goes away. I'll even throw in a nice payment for your trouble." "It's not about money," I told her. "It's always about money, dear. Think it over. You have until tomorrow." She hung up, true to Diane's word. By afternoon, a county inspector arrived to examine the farmhouse. He found problems with everything: the wiring, the septic system, the porch railings. He handed me a list of violations that would cost thousands to fix, all needed immediately. As he left, another truck arrived. Workers put up signs along my property line. "Future home of Sunny Pines East. Luxury living coming soon." My water pressure dropped to a trickle. When I called the utility company, they claimed there was maintenance work happening and couldn't say when it would be fixed. I tried ordering pizza for dinner. The driver called to say he couldn't find my address, though delivery had never been a problem before. Step by step, Diane was cutting me off. That night, I sat on the porch in darkness, watching the security lights sweep across the fields, where my grandfather had once grown corn. Their bulldozers sat silent in the distance, waiting to continue destroying his legacy. My phone lit up with a message from Mr. Wallace. "They've filed a countersuit claiming your documents are forged. Court date set for 3 months from now. They'll keep building in the meantime." 3 months. By then, the houses would be half finished. The damage would be done. I scrolled through my contacts, looking for anyone who might help. A name caught my eye: Janet Rivera, a reporter for the local newspaper. We'd gone to high school together. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but maybe. As I considered calling her, headlights appeared on the long driveway. A car carefully maneuvered around the concrete barriers and approached the house. I tensed, wondering what new trouble Diane was sending my way. The car parked, and a familiar figure stepped out. Gerald Fisher, the HOA treasurer who had examined my documents at the meeting. "I shouldn't be here," he said nervously, glancing back at the security vehicles in the distance. "If Diane finds out—" "Why are you here?" I asked. He pulled out a flash drive from his pocket. "Because what she's doing isn't right. I've been keeping the HOA books for 7 years. There are things you should see." I invited him inside, away from prying eyes. At my kitchen table, he opened his laptop and showed me financial records, meeting minutes, and emails. "Diane and the board have been using HOA funds like their personal bank account," he explained. "Special fees that disappear, contracts that go to family members, reserve funds invested in businesses owned by them." "Why show me this?" I asked. "Because I'm not the only unhappy homeowner," Gerald said. "Many of us are tired of her rules and control. When you showed up with those property documents, it was the first time I've seen her scared." He pointed to a spreadsheet. "Look at these special assessments from last year. Every homeowner paid $2,000 for road repairs. The actual work cost half that amount. The rest vanished." "That's theft," I said. Gerald nodded. "And there's more. The 20 homes you said are on your land. The people who live there have been complaining about drainage problems for years. Diane keeps promising fixes, but nothing happens. Now we know why. She knew those houses might not legally belong to the HOA." As we talked, my phone buzzed with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. "We support you against Diane. The Millers, 42 Sunny Pines Lane. She fined us $500 for planting vegetables instead of flowers. Can we help? The Jackson family. Our children's playground equipment was removed without notice. We want to join your fight. The Rodriguezes." Gerald smiled slightly. "I may have shared your number with a few friends." For the first time since this battle began, I felt hope. Diane had power, connections, and money, but she had also made enemies, many of them. "We need a plan," I said, "and I think I know where to start." The next morning, I woke up to an email from Janet Rivera, the reporter I'd contacted earlier. Attached was a draft of her article exposing Diane Reynolds in Sunny Pines HOA. She included financial records, internal memos, and even whistleblower testimonies from former employees who described how the HOA manipulated county officials for permits and approvals. "This will blow everything wide open," Janet wrote in the email. "But be prepared. Diane won't go down quietly." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with another message. It was from Gerald Fisher, the HOA treasurer, who had shared their books with me. His text was short but urgent. "They know I talked to you. Someone broke into my house last night. Be careful." I called him immediately. He sounded shaken. They trashed my office, he said. Files everywhere. Computer smashed. They didn't take anything valuable, just documents related to the HOA finances. Do you think it was Diane? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. But whoever it was, they're scared. That afternoon, I drove to Gerald's house to check on him. On the way, I noticed a black SUV tailing me again. When I pulled over at a gas station, the vehicle sped past without stopping. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It felt personal. When I arrived at Gerald's, his front yard was cordoned off with police tape. Officers were taking statements, but Gerald stood outside, looking pale and exhausted. They're trying to intimidate us, he muttered as we walked inside. But they've made one big mistake. He handed me a flash drive. This has everything. Their fake invoices, the shell companies, the bribes to local officials. If something happens to me, make sure this gets out. Before I could respond, his phone rang. It was his wife, panicked. Their teenage son had been suspended from school after someone reported him for vandalizing a locker room wall. The accusation seemed flimsy. A prank gone wrong, she insisted. But the timing couldn't have been worse. They're targeting my family now, Gerald whispered, his voice breaking. What do I do? You keep fighting, I told him firmly. We're not backing down. Later that evening, Janet's article hit the internet. Within hours, it went viral. Headlines screamed. Sunny Pines scandal, corruption, fraud, and environmental destruction uncovered. People flooded social media with their own stories of HOA abuse. Some accused Diane of ruining lives. Others demanded investigations into local government collusion. By midnight, protesters gathered outside the Sunny Pines clubhouse, holding signs that read, "Stop stealing our land," and "Justice for victims of fraud." But Diane wasn't done yet. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. An unknown number flashed on the screen. "If you think this changes anything, you're wrong," Diane sneered when I answered. "You may have turned a few heads, but you haven't won. Not yet. What are you going to do, Diane? Burn the evidence? Threaten more people?" Her laugh sent chills down my spine. "Oh, sweetheart, threats are just the beginning. Tomorrow, your precious grandfather's legacy is going to look very different." She hung up before I could reply. The next day, I discovered what she meant. Local news stations reported that Sunny Pines had filed a lawsuit, not against me, but against the county. They claimed the original property surveys were outdated and irrelevant, citing modern zoning laws as justification for their development. Worse, they argued that halting construction would cause irreparable harm to the local economy. To add insult to injury, Victor Langston, the shadowy developer Gerald had mentioned, held a press conference. Standing beside Diane, he announced plans to expand Sunny Pines East into a massive commercial complex, including shopping malls, office buildings, and hotels, all under the guise of creating jobs and boosting tourism. "Our vision is progress," Victor declared, gesturing to flashy renderings of glass skyscrapers towering over cornfields. "Progress that benefits everyone." Behind them, bulldozers idled near the edge of the wetlands. While the legal battle raged, tensions in the community reached a boiling point. Existing homeowners were divided. Some supported the coalition, grateful for the chance to break free from Diane's iron grip. Others feared losing their investments and sided with the HOA. One evening, Rachel Winters, the young woman who'd approached me after the meeting, knocked on my door. Her eyes were red from crying. "They froze my bank account," she said. Victor's lawyers said they'll sue if I don't drop support for your plan. Rachel wasn't alone. Several other families reported similar threats. Cars were vandalized, pets went missing, and anonymous notes appeared on doorsteps warning them to back off. Fear began creeping back into the neighborhood. But then, something unexpected happened. A twist neither Diane nor Victor saw coming. A week later, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a letter and a stack of photographs. The letter was unsigned, but the photos spoke volumes. They showed Victor Langston meeting with County Commissioner James Harris at a secluded cabin. In one image, stacks of cash exchanged hands. Another depicted Victor shaking hands with a man identified as Judge Evans, the same judge overseeing our case. Attached to the photos was a note. Time to connect the dots. Expose them all. It wasn't just blackmail material. It was proof of corruption, reaching far beyond Diane Reynolds. I forwarded the package to Janet, who promised to verify its authenticity. Meanwhile, I called an emergency meeting of the Meadow Creek Homeowners Coalition. We need to escalate this, I told the group. If we can prove Victor and his partners are corrupt, we can shut them down for good. But how? Sarah Jenkins asked. They have money, power, connections. Not anymore, I interrupted, because now we have leverage. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my bedroom window. For the first time in months, there was no rumble of bulldozers or hum of security vehicles blocking my driveway. Instead, sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting warm golden light on Grandpa Joe's old desk. It felt like peace had finally returned to the farm. But this wasn't just any ordinary day. It was the day everything changed for Meadow Creek. At 10 a.m., I stood at the podium inside the newly renovated community center, formerly Grandpa's farmhouse. Over 400 people filled the room, homeowners from Sunny Pines East, neighbors who'd lived here for decades, county officials, environmental activists, and even reporters from national news outlets. Cameras flashed as I adjusted the microphone, taking a deep breath before speaking. Thank you all for being here today. I began, my voice steady, but tinged with emotion. This journey started not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted justice. For my grandfather, for our community, and for the land that has given so much to all of us. Behind me, a large screen displayed images of the wetlands, now protected by federal conservation laws. Pictures showed endangered species thriving in their natural habitat, alongside blueprints of the redesigned development. Smaller homes, solar panels, walking trails, and green spaces replaced the sprawling luxury complexes Victor Langston had envisioned. For too long, I continued, we've been divided, pitted against each other by greed, fear, and manipulation. But today, we stand united. Together, we've proven that progress doesn't have to come at the cost of our values or our environment. Applause erupted throughout the room. People cheered, some wiping away tears. Among them were Rachel Winters, Sarah Jenkins, and Gerald Fisher, all smiling proudly. Even Mr. Grayson, the elderly neighbor forced to sell his home years ago, nodded approvingly from the front row. After the meeting ended, I walked outside to find something extraordinary happening. Dozens of volunteers had gathered near the edge of the wetlands, planting native trees and flowers. Children ran around, holding shovels almost as tall as they were, while parents laughed and worked together. The air buzzed with hope and determination. Mrs. Thompson approached me, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. Her eyes sparkled as she handed me one. Your grandfather would be bursting with pride, she said softly. He always dreamed of seeing this place thrive, not just for your family, but for everyone. I smiled, looking out over the fields, where corn once grew, and where life was beginning anew. In the distance, a blue heron soared above the marsh, its reflection shimmering in the water below. It reminded me of the journal entry I'd found weeks earlier, an entry where Grandpa wrote about fighting developers 3 decades ago. He hadn't won back then, but he'd never stopped believing in the possibility of change. "It's funny," I said, turning to Mrs. Thompson. "When I first came here, I thought I was fighting to protect what was mine. But now I realize it was never just about the land. It was about showing people a better way forward." Later that evening, as twilight settled over the farm, I sat on the porch with Gerald Fisher. We sipped coffee and talked about the future. The HOA scandal had left scars, but also opportunities, a chance to rebuild trust, create transparency, and foster genuine community spirit. "I still can't believe Diane tried to get away with all of that," Gerald admitted, shaking his head, "using HOA funds like her personal piggy bank, threatening people into silence." "She underestimated us," I replied. "She thought she could scare me off, but she didn't count on one thing." "What's that?" Gerald asked. "Grandpa's legacy, and the fact that I wasn't alone." We both laughed, knowing how true those words were. From the very beginning, this fight hadn't been mine alone. It belonged to every person who refused to stay silent, who stood up to corruption, and who believed in the power of unity. As the stars appeared in the night sky, I pulled out Grandpa's faded notebook and flipped to the last page. Written in his neat handwriting was a simple yet profound message. Sometimes the best trap isn't about catching someone doing wrong. It's about showing them a better way to do right. Diane Reynolds and Victor Langston had walked straight into that trap, thinking they could take what wasn't theirs. But instead of destroying them, their actions had sparked something far greater, a movement toward fairness, sustainability, and respect for the land. 1 year later, Meadow Creek looked unrecognizable compared to the place I'd inherited. Homes coexisted harmoniously with nature. Solar-powered streetlights illuminated tree-lined streets, and children played freely in parks built on former construction sites. The community center hosted weekly events, from art classes to gardening workshops, and served as a hub for collaboration and connection. Every time I passed the wetlands, I paused to watch the herons glide gracefully across the water. They reminded me of Grandpa's wisdom and resilience. His vision hadn't died with him. It had grown stronger, carried forward by those who shared his values. On clear nights, I still sat on the porch, listening to the sounds of the countryside, the rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the laughter of neighbors gathering nearby. Life had come full circle, and as I raised a glass of lemonade to toast the future, I whispered 3 words under my breath. "Thank you, Grandpa."